Welcome back to Marching Arts Network TV. My name is Kanan, and I would like to welcome you to part number 2 of our look at the top 26 corps, or the look at the 26 corps that have competed in DCI Finals that no longer exist. So what I've done here is I've created a really convoluted system of math to apply what I'm calling an impact score to all of the corps that competed in DCI Finals, with a view of finding the top 12 corps based on historical impact. Now, the thing is that the list, which I'll put the computations down in or I'll put the final list or whatever in the comment section below. The whole idea of coming up with a really complicated system of math to determine this top 12 was to take all opinion out of the equation. So this was heavily weighted to A, making finals more than once, B, while you're in finals, making an impact while you're there. So it rewarded longevity and rewarded competitive excellence. So to that end, I will quickly run through the list of those corps that, well, first off, those corps that didn't make finals. And that was in 24th place, we had a tie between the Blue Raiders, Dutch Boy, and Stockton Commodores. We then had a tie for 22nd place between, and I say it every time I mention this corps, they had the most badass uniforms in the history of Drum Corps. That is the Black Knights and the Purple Lancers. 21st place was the Royal Crusaders. We then had a tie for 19th place between the De La Salle Oaklands and the Des Plaines Vanguard. 18th place, the Seneca Optimists. 17th place, the Oakland Crusaders. 16th place, North Star. 15th place, the Guardsmen. 14th place, Argonne Rebels. And just missing out of the top 12 that no corps want to be in, of course, was the Magic of Orlando. In our last video, we looked at 12th place Muchachos, 11th place Sky Riders, 10th place Velvet Knights, although I should back up very quick because Sky Riders very well, maybe, hopefully, coming off this list, because Sky Riders, for those who don't know, are a registered sound sport team this year. There is a show in Hutchinson, Kansas, so hopefully this list will be getting a little bit smaller. I'd like this list to get a lot smaller, but anyway. So we had the Sky Riders in 11th, we had the Velvet Knights in 10th, the Kilties in 9th, the Anaheim Kingsmen, so first DCI champion on this list, in 8th place, and in 7th place we had the Freelancers. In today's video, we're going to be looking at, in 6th place, with 7 DCI Finals appearances, 1 top 5 in that period, and an impact score of 68.6, Suncoast Sound. In 5th place on this list, 9-time DCI finalist. We had 2 top 5 appearances in that time and an impact score of 87.8, the Bridgemen. 4th place on this list, 16-time DCI finalist with 3 top 5 appearances, an impact score of 144.2 from Toledo, Ohio, the Glassmen. 3rd place on this list, only made finals 9 times, but they were only in existence for 9 years. Our second DCI champion on this list is, of course, Star of Indiana. 2nd place on this list, 12 DCI finalist appearances, impact score of 176.2, 27th Lancers. And 1st place on this list with an impact score of 968.8. And if that doesn't tell you what an impact the loss of this corps is going to have on this activity, not just this year, but moving forward, is, of course, the Cadets. 44-time DCI finalists, 34 times in the top 5, 10 DCI championships, and they're gone. I went into a little bit about the Cadets in the podcast this past week. If you haven't watched the podcast, I'll put a link for it somewhere here. I went into a little bit on the Cadets in the podcast. I'm going to be doing a separate video on the Cadets. What I'm not going to do, though, is I'm not going to make it an angry video or anything like that, or the DCI sky is falling, or anything like that, because I don't think it is. That being said, what I will say about the Cadets is, or the Cadet situation is, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm hurt. I never marched the Cadets. I didn't have any connection to the Cadets. I knew a grand total of a handful of people that ever marched in the Corps. Um, but the Garfield Cadets were one of the reasons that I chose to march drum corps. I saw a video when I was a teeny bopper in high school, and I just went, man, I want to be one of those. I want to put on one of them Superman suits and just be a badass. And, you know, when you look at the stuff that the cadets did over the years, from from changing the activity from straight up and down the yard line and everything at Fortissimo to curvilinear drill to playing modern American symphonic music to doing Americana shows. They brought dance to the field. They brought body movement to the field. 87 Garfield Cadets was a sea changer of a show. Without that show, we didn't get into what we now refer to as modern drum corps. If you've never seen that show, I'd challenge you to go watch it. It is probably the first true modern drum corps show that ever existed. To bring us such memorable performances as they did in Les Miserables in '89 when they changed their name to Cadets of Bergen County. We, of course, had the Z-Pull. We had George Zingali. We had Gino Cipriani. We had Don Angelica. We had so many incredible names connected to that organization. But we also had a lot of controversy as well. We can't talk about all the good stuff without talking about the bad stuff. He who shall not be named, and I will not name that man on this channel, but everybody knows who I'm talking about, broke rule number one. And if you don't know what rule number one is, Google it. You know, he left the Corps in, what was it, 2017, 2018, something like that, and left them about $1.5 million in debt, it was estimated, in lost sponsorships, lost ticket sales, lost revenue. Had the nerve to turn around and sue the cadets for $650,000 when his departure was completely of his own doing, and then got away with it. And I don't give a shit what anyone says. The man got away with it. Got away with it. And then now we find out that that wasn't the only time that that happened in the organization. Assaults of a SA nature, we shall say. That wasn't the only time that that happened in the organization. It was actually going on before him. The culture was there, so you can almost see how it happened whilst he was in charge. But that being said, 42 years later, the Pipers come calling. You know, whether you agree with the law, whether you agree with the fact that somebody 42 years later is irrelevant. The simple fact is the law is what the law is. Somebody felt wronged, and they've rightly followed the redress that was available to them, and that redress, of course, was the legal road. And unfortunately, the combination of the previous scandal, the combination of that and COVID, and just lost revenue after lost revenue. A lot of people have said that the activity is one or two litigations away from being dead. The cadets were truly one litigation away from death, and they just couldn't fight this. So sad that they're gone, but we will, of course, have a look at the cadets. Before we get started in all that, though, I would ask, please, if you like what we do, take a second, hit the like and subscribe button. It'd be great if you could leave us a comment, let me know what you think. Ring the bell, share the videos, so on and so forth. We have a merchandise store, and we also have a membership scheme as well. But in the meantime, sit back, grab yourself a nice cold drink if you wish, or a warm drink, or an alcoholic drink, or a non-alcoholic drink, or whatever. And let's have a look at a little taste of the top 6 of the top 12 of this list. So enjoy. Okay, the first corps we're going to look at on our list today is from Clearwater, Florida, Suncoast Sound. So Suncoast Sound was a corps I always really enjoyed. They were, how can I put this way? They were innovators in the activity in that they absolutely did their own thing. They did their own thing on the field. They did their own thing off the field. They were the pioneers of all modern, or of all original music. They had a very close collaboration with Robert W. Smith, of course. They also were pretty instrumental in the world of corporate sponsorships. So, and what I mean by that is they had an arrangement with Circle K Corporation of the convenience store fame that they had an agreement with them. So basically, I think it was around 1985, 86, Core was completely on their ass. They didn't have any money. They needed new horns. They needed new drums. They needed new uniforms. The buses were falling apart. The whole 9 yards. The Core was in deep trouble. And in came Circle K. Circle K agreed to sponsor them for multiple years, allowed them to get the Core back on its feet from a logistical perspective. And everything was going smooth until the economy changed in 1989. The Florida lottery laws changed in 1989. Change in senior management at Circle K came along about that same time. And just as quickly as Circle K came into the picture, they were out of the picture. But of course, by this point, Suncoast Sound had spent all the money and were left holding the bill for it. The Core basically folded in 1989. However, managed to get back together very late in the winter season. They didn't actually come out until I think it was around I want to say the second or third week of July. Very, very late in the season they came out, which was pretty unheard of back then because slotting happened then as slotting happens now. And if you weren't out early season, you were screwed. But the 1989 Suncoast Sound was just completely undeniable. The horn line, the drum line, and just the production of the show was great. They did kind of the same show they did in 1985. They did Florida Suite, but they did a lot of things different in the 1989 version. I actually liked the 1989 version better, though the 85 version was much more competitive. I just like the arrangements in 89 better, and I respect the hell out of that drum corps. The Freelancers, we were absolutely killing Suncoast Sound the first few times we saw them. We didn't think there was any chance that we weren't going to make 9th place at finals until these kids from Clearwater, Florida said, hey, don't forget about us. And they absolutely smoked us at finals, and quite frankly, deservedly so. So first thing we're going to look at, though, is a little bit of the 1988 show, and then follow that up with a little bit of 1989. Enjoy. So this show is entitled Symphonic Dances for the Modern Child. It was all original music by Robert W. Smith. It was quite controversial in its day. You'd think with child in the title, it's going to be a lovely, happy show, and it's kind of anything but. So it was a bit of a commentary on what is the modern child. I would say this show made people uncomfortable. Love that show so much. And then the next thing we're going to look at is a little bit of the opener from the 1989 show. Again, like I said, I just liked the arrangements better in 1989. I thought that I like the story of the Corps. And the other thing I would say as well is when you look at the 1989 Suncoast Sound, they're not a particularly big drum corps. In fact, I don't even know that they had 128 on the field. I'd be very, very surprised if they did. But easily, this horn line you're about to see is easily in the top 10 loudest horn lines I ever heard live. So 1989 Suncoast Sound, a little snippet of the opener. Enjoy. This whole opening build, though, is just beautiful. So there you go, 1989 Suncoast Sound, the corps that shouldn't have made finals and absolutely 1000% deserved to do so. And unfortunately, that was the last time they ever made finals. So from Clearwater, Florida, in Pinellas Park, by way of Tampa Bay, is of course Suncoast Sound. And next up we have... Okay, next up on the list is going to be from Bayonne, New Jersey, the Bridgemen. Bridgemen were around as the Bridgemen from 1965, finally folding in, I think it was 1986, as a junior corps. A number of years later, they came back in DCA, and in 2016, hung up the yellow banana coats for the last time. We're going to look at a couple of pieces that are actually kind of the same. And what I mean by that is we're going to look at the 1980 Bridgemen playing in the stone. And then we're going to look at the 2016 Bridgemen DCA Corps playing the same in the stone. However, with a slight twist. And that twist is going to be that they are performing it with the Jersey Surf. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a bit of a fan of the Jersey Surf. I don't hide that fact at all. I just like the organization. I like what they're doing. I like the fact that I think they're doing drum corps in a responsible manner. I think that they've taken kind of the spirit of the Bridgemen as well, in that we're going to put crowd entertaining shows first and foremost. One of my favorite DCI Division II moments was when they spun the wheel and said, end the show or take the penalty. They were taking the penalty anyway. But what happened in 2016 was quite interesting because the Bridgemen came out that year. They had decided, this is it, we're done, we're hanging them up for good. In 2012, however, the Jersey Surf played a show called Bridgemania as a tribute to their older cousins, I guess you could call them. And when 2016 came around, the Bridgemen put an alumni corps out at DCI. This was it, we're done, we're hanging them up. And that alumni corps sat in with Jersey Surf at Soundsport and did In the Stone. So we're going to have a look at both. So first things first, we'll have a look at 1980. Enjoy. I think they show a close-up of the drum line here in a second. Just have a look at how enormous the bass drums are. I think number 2 would be equivalent to number 5 these days. Okay, so that's a little taste of 1980. Now let's fast forward it to 2016 and watch them with Jersey Surf. Enjoy. I love watching the color guard down at the bottom as well, just dancing, grooving, enjoying the hell out of it. They know this is it. Watch them at the end as well, they wave goodbye, which just gets me every time. Love all the hugs at the front. They know what they've done. They know the impact they've left. There's the wave goodbye. Got a hangover at the end. As somebody who has a core that's on this list, it kills me seeing a core go away. But seeing a core going away, knowing they're going away, brings a whole new element to it. So, Bridgemen, I salute you. Okay, next up on this list was 16 DCI finalist appearances, 3 in the top 5, and we're going to have a look at one of those top 5s today, is the Glassmen from Toledo, Ohio. Little personal story about the Glassmen I'll share. 1992 freelancers, we made finals in 12th place. 13th place that year was the Glassmen. Prior to that year, the Glassmen had never been close to DCI finals. Ever. And to be fair, Glassmen outscored us most of the year that year. So we went on the field at DCI semifinals that year. And that year, I don't think they still do it now, but back then you used to hear the scores of the cores after they'd performed. So as we're coming on the field, we hear Brent Crocker shout, "We have a score for the Glassmen." I can't remember what the score was off the top of my head, but it was higher than our high score to that point. And so we kind of had I wouldn't say that we had an oh shit moment, but we had a bit of a reality check. We knew we had to lay down a show. And to be fair, we did. We laid down a great show. What I remember, though, was as we were going on the field, the Glassmen were kind of lining the tunnel as we're going into Camp Randall Stadium and actually saying, "Hey, good luck, freelancers. Good luck, freelancers." we came off the field and they were still there. Hey, great show, freelancers. Great show, freelancers. I heard one guy say, may the best corps win, you know. VK went on, did their show, and then they shouted, we have a score for the freelancers, and we beat Glassmen by a 10th. And I remember there was a whole bunch of Glassmen there. Obviously, they're just as interested in our score as we were. And I remember there wasn't any bad blood. There wasn't any ill will. There wasn't... In fact, I don't even remember any of them crying or anything like that. What I do remember is a bunch of them coming up to me and just shaking my hand and saying, hey, well done, congratulations, kick ass tomorrow night. And that's a little memory of this organization that has stuck with me ever since. So it's a organization that I have a great deal of respect for. Other little things that I would say about the Glassmen as well is that little things that stick out at me is epic brass lines, some really, really cool shows. They did a show in 2013, I think it was. It was like a gypsy show, which I thought was just super, super cool. It came in 12th, but I still thought it was a super, super show. And then the other thing about the Glassmen, which was quite funny, because prior to the last uniform that they wore that people remembered them for, they had some pretty horrendous uniforms, pretty badly fitting, horrendous uniforms. And then they came out with this uniform design with essentially white from about the breast up to the shoulders, and then white sleeves, and then a black everything else. And the whole corps looked about 9 feet tall. Then the other thing I remember about that uniform, and I know this is a little thing, but I remember just every time I saw the Glassmen, I thought, that is the best tailored drum corps on the field. Anyway, I digress. We're going to have a look at 1999, a little snippet of 1999's Empire of Gold, one of their top 5 shows. So without further ado, enjoy. See what I mean? See how effective that uniform is, though. They all look super tall, even from the top of Camp Randall Stadium. Which I believe, by the way, should be the permanent home of DCI, not Indianapolis. Had my rookie year at Camp Randall, and I aged out at Camp Randall. One of the visual design elements that was always very prevalent with the Glassmen, of course, was triangles. You'll see it in the uniforms, you'll see it in drill sets. There's triangles. What a cool solo. Old school high mark time there, cool. there was just nothing quite like a Camp Randall crowd. Yeah, so Glassman, I was gutted when the Glassmen folded, if I'm honest with you. And I found their folding a little bit surprising because ultimately it was just down to money. Um, and it was a core that always struck me as pretty substantially responsible, if you will, when it came to finances. They owned a school outside of Toledo, Ohio. So they had a physical home. They had a place where they could have camps. They could have spring training, and they could have a place to store all their equipment. Classrooms so they could use when there was when there was inclement weather and so on. So they had all of the infrastructure that the vast majority of drum corps didn't have, and many still don't have. But they just ran out of dosh. So sadly, they're on this list from Toledo, Ohio, the Glassmen. Okay, next up is the second former DCI champion to be on this list. 9-time DCI finalists. However, they only existed in DCI for 9 years. So that ain't half bad if you think 9 years and they won a DCI championship. And I would argue they should actually have 3 DCI championships. I'd say they should have won in 1990, 91, and 93. Of course, is going to be Star of Indiana. So Star of Indiana, as I said, came about in first competitive season was 1985. Back then they were famous for the fact they wore fuchsia. They didn't wear pink. They wore fuchsia uniforms, trimmed in white and black with a big white star on the chest. The Corps was, there was a lot of controversy involved with Star of Indiana that I always felt was very, very unfair. Of course, look, back in the day, I used to sing the song as well, Bill Cook's Money song and all that stuff. And looking back at it in retrospect, it was pretty unfair. So Bill Cook was a successful businessman from Bloomington, Indiana, who founded Star of Indiana. He founded Star of Indiana after his son marched in. I want to say his son marched in the Glassmen, I think it was. Anyway, son marched drum corps. He fell in love with the activity and decided to start a group in Bloomington, Indiana. And the way that he did it was he was a very rich guy, and he essentially created the corps out of fresh air and seeded them for success. He gave them the ability. He bought an old school. He hired the best staff that money could buy, and then he gave the Corps an ability to support themselves through Star of Indiana bus charter lines. Back then, lots of drum corps, I know Madison, Blue Knights, a bunch of the corps in the Midwest, actually all toured around in Star of Indiana's buses. There's this common misconception about Star of Indiana that they just, spent money hand over fist, blah, 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 and it's absolute rubbish. The truth of the matter is that Bill Cook gave them the money that they needed to do what they needed to do, but then it was up to them to do it. They spent their money wisely. For instance, one example I would give you is that they were on 2-valve G bugles up until the day they left the activity in 1993. Possibly a little bit, I'm not really sure they totally belong on this list because they didn't actually fold. They just evolved. They stopped competing in DCI. But what we're going to look at is, I'm going to show this to you from the high cam perspective, actually. And that is possibly the greatest drill move in the history of DCI, which was, of course, written by the greatest drill designer in DCI. I'm not going to go so far as say it is the greatest drill move in DCI because I actually think what is slightly better, though not as technically difficult, and that is, of course, we're looking at the cross-to-cross. And we will look later in this video at what I think is actually ever so slightly better. But the first thing we're going to look at is, of course, the cross-to-cross, and then we'll have a little bit of a look at their 1985 show, just so you can get a sense of where they came from. So first things first is, of course, going to be the cross to cross. Enjoy. I mean, out of nowhere. I mean, that just came out of nowhere. What I'm also going to see is we're going to have a look at the 1990 version of the cross because they did have the cross in the 1990 show, and I actually think the 1990 show is possibly slightly better. But let's have a look at that one now. Star was pretty notorious for having stars in their show, just like Crown has crowns now. I just love the transition of stars here. There are no words in the English language that can convince me that Star of Indiana did not win DCI that year. I'm sorry. Um, anyway, let's finish off Star of Indiana with having a look at where they came from. Just remember when you're watching this is a first year drum corps. Star of Indiana. Okay, next up on the list from Revere, Massachusetts is the 27th Lancers. High watermark for this corps was second place in 1980. We're going to have a little bit of a look at that show. You simply cannot watch 27th Lancers and not listen to Danny Boy. It's kind of the law. I don't know what's going on with my lighting, but for some reason my hands look like really orange, and I promise you they're not. Anyway, maybe I should just stop talking like Donald Trump and using my hands and all that stuff. Anyway, don't want to get political here. 27th Lancers started in 1965, high water mark in 1980, finally folded up shop in 1986, I think it was. Fell out of finals in 84, 85, I think it was. 27th Lancers, they were a very, very traditional drum corps, and they were a corps that was designed for the era of the tick system. The tick system went away after 1982, and that is when 27th Lancers' competitive success went away as well. I just don't think the corps adapted to a post-tick world, quite frankly. That being said, for the time that they were here, they did some great shows. I have a couple of people I know very well that marched in 27th Lancers. 27th Lancers and Freelancers, I believe, weren't exactly the best of friends. It was a bit predated my time with the Corps, but I remember we used to do things like we weren't allowed to say the number 27. When we were doing push-ups, it was 24, 25, 26, 28. So go figure. But we'll have a look at the 27th Lancers from their 1980 show. Something I want you to keep an eye out for here as well is in the clip that I'm going to show you, there are some very strange horns in this horn line that I only noticed the last time I looked at this clip. And if I didn't know any better, I would actually say that they almost look to be valved trombones. You'll see one, well, in fact, you'll see one right there. I don't know if you can... Yeah, there you go. You should see my, there's one there, and there's one there. There's a traditional baritone, and you can see it's very much so a different instrument. So anybody from 27th Lancers, I'd be really curious to know what that instrument actually is. But anyway, 27th Lancers, 1980, enjoy. I'm very, very convinced that is some sort of a valve trombone, though. Apologies for the quality of the video. I mean, obviously we recorded things on potatoes back then. Just when I watch these old shows, I love the sheer precision of the color guards. When they didn't have to concentrate on all the other body stuff, they could just concentrate on the equipment. I mean, come on! Wow. For those younger viewers who wonder what those two snaps were, those were the gunshots. So you'll notice that the field judges are coming off the field now. So the performance judges come off in the last minute or so is just GE. So there you have it, 27th Lancers. Like I said, I think it was a corps that ultimately was a bit of a victim of their own success. Like I said, I just don't think that they adapted well to the post-tick world. So, but they are second place on this list. So 27th Lancers from Revere, Massachusetts. Which brings us to number 1 on this list. And a drum corps I never, ever thought would be on this list is, of course, the Cadets from, as of most recently, Erie, Pennsylvania. Cadets started out in life as the Holy Name Cadets, reached or had their first real competitive success as the Garfield Cadets. In the late 80s, they moved out of Garfield and changed their name to the Cadets of Bergen County. Later on, they moved to Allentown, New Jersey. Were known for quite a while as the Cadets sponsored by YEA, Youth Education and the Arts. And you can't talk about the Cadets with talking about He Who Shall Not Be Named, and I'm still not going to give him the pleasure of his name being on here. But he did push boundaries, and the Cadets pushed boundaries. So we're going to look at a few clips of the Cadets on this episode. I'm not going to do super deep dive on them because I'm going to do a completely different video on the Cadets, which I'm hoping to drop back end of the weekend. But what we're going to look at is a couple of the more innovative moments, in my opinion, of the Cadets, and also my personal favorite drill move that George Zengali ever wrote. So the first thing we're going to look at is the 1982 Cadets, the 83 Cadets, my apologies, and specifically what we have come to know as the Z-pull. And why are we going to look at the Z-pull? Well, we're going to look at the Z-pull because I think that it is one of those moves that changed the activity. You have to remember, we've just come out of the tick system the previous year. And now we've got curvilinear drill. We can use the entire field, and the Cadets absolutely did that. So, first thing we'll look at, 1983, the Z-pull. In fact, I'm going to let this one play so you can see it again in 2019, I think it was. That was for 1983, that was so incredibly intricate and boundary pushing. And we'll move it forward to 2015 here. And that show 10 I thought was such a killer show. Again, a beautiful show in 2021 in a non-competitive year. So, 2021, let's talk about that for just a second. 2021, it was a bit of a weird year. A lot of corps did really retro shows, but with a modern twist. And did anybody notice that the crowds just absolutely ate them up? And anybody who thinks that the kids that are marching these days don't like the old shows, you're crazy. They do. They dig the hell out of them. I think that 2021 might have might have scratched an itch for some people. But anyway, so next thing we're going to look at 1987, and specifically we're going to look at, in my opinion, mind you, this is my opinion only, what I think is possibly the best thing that George Zingali ever wrote, and that was the dissolving company front in the end of the show from Appalachian Spring. Is it the most intricate thing that he ever wrote? No, Cross to Cross just kills this as far as intricacy is concerned. But from a pure artistry perspective, this is just visual art. I always tell people, if you've never seen this particular clip before, pick out one player in the horn line and just follow him as best you can throughout the entire move. And what you'll find is that this company front hits for a very brief second, and then instantly it starts to dissolve and reappears at the very, very, very last second possible in a complete mirror image. The thing about this, though, that I think makes this the most effective, though, is watch, I think it's 16 or 24 counts into the move. There's a very, very brief 2-count halt, but it's not a halt, it's a freeze, and then from level up to the box. Again, little tiny things, but little tiny things just done so well and so effectively as well. So I don't know if you guys are going to dig this as much as I do, but I think it's the best thing George Zingali ever wrote. So here we go. See it hit for just the briefest of seconds. Here comes the hold. All the body movement as well. Again, beautiful. And right at the last second. I'm going to let that play again without me talking. That's art. That is just straight up art. Next thing we're going to look at is, very briefly, again, I'm not going to do a full, huge deep dive here, but the next thing we're going to look at is from the Cadets in 2005. As I said, the Cadets weren't afraid to push boundaries, and they weren't afraid to take risks. In 2005, The Zone, which was an absolutely stunning show, took a lot of risks, and it, quite frankly, pissed off a lot of people. Now, remind you, 2005, we've just started amplification. We've allowed voice into the shows to be amplified as well. Now, the Cadets weren't the only ones guilty of this, but they maybe went a little bit overboard. But again, it's a boundary. We're going to push it. So, enjoy. So, as I said, they weren't afraid to push boundaries. And look, the final thing we're going to look at, I was originally going to say when I first recorded this, if this is to be the end, but unfortunately we now know it is the end. And as such, Atlas Rising, let's talk about it for just a second. I think it was the most Cadets show in the last 20 years. Take away the uniforms. And at first, I didn't like the uniforms, but then I got it. The uniforms completely fit the show. It was all about athletes and athletics, and even up close in these really, really foreign outfits that they were wearing, they still looked like the Cadets. So this was the end, and I think they ended on a high. So the Cadets.
Together we rise.
Kills me. It saddens me. And it was. I don't want to see any corps on this list, but this is one I definitely didn't want to see on this list. But that's it. The Cadets. And that's it for this episode. So, again, we're going to do a deep dive on the Cadets. Hopefully drop that back end of the weekend, I should hope. But yeah, so if you like what we're doing here at Marching Arts Network, it would be really great if you could just take a second, hit the like and subscribe button, drop us a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this two-part series that I've done. And until next time, march on.